I was coming home from work when I saw a for sale sign on my front lawn and a real estate agent showing strangers through my house. When I asked what was happening, my mother-in-law smiled and said, "We decided it's time to downsize and help. You two start fresh." What she didn't know was that the house was solely in my name, and she just committed real estate fraud. My name is Michael Sterling. I'm 36 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my mother-in-law tried to steal my house right out from under me while I was at work, and how her attempt at family manipulation turned into a legal nightmare that she never saw coming. That for sale sign I just mentioned was planted on the front lawn of my home in Portland, Oregon. On a Tuesday afternoon in September 2023, a real estate agent leading a family of potential buyers through my living room was as shocked as I was when I introduced myself as the actual homeowner and asked everyone to leave immediately. "I'm so sorry," the agent stammered, gathering her papers. Mrs. Sterling told me she had full authority to list the property. She showed me what looked like proper documentation. I looked at my mother-in-law, Catherine Sterling, who was standing in my kitchen, wearing the kind of satisfied smile that told me this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated power play that had been months in the making. "We need to talk," I told Catherine after the agent and potential buyers had left. "Oh, Michael," she said, settling into my dining room chair as if she owned the place. "I know this seems sudden, but Robert and I have been discussing this for weeks. This house is far too big for just the two of you, and the market is so strong right now. We thought it would be smart to sell while prices are high." There were several problems with Catherine's reasoning, but the biggest one was this. My wife Jessica had been dead for 8 months, killed by a drunk driver on her way home from work. The house wasn't too big for the two of us. It was the only connection I had left to the life Jessica and I had built together, and Catherine Sterling had no legal right to make any decisions about it whatsoever. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the best stories about family manipulation start with good intentions that slowly reveal themselves to be something much darker. I met Jessica Sterling in 2015 at a coffee shop near Portland State University, where she was finishing her master's degree in social work. I was 28, working as a project manager for a construction company, and completely unprepared for the intelligent, compassionate woman who would change everything about my life. Jessica's family seemed normal at first. Her father, Robert, was a retired accountant, quiet and practical. Her mother, Catherine, was more outgoing, involved in local charities and community organizations. They welcomed me warmly, and when Jessica and I married in 2017, I genuinely felt like I'd gained not just a wife, but a supportive extended family. The first red flag appeared during our house hunting process. Jessica and I had saved for 3 years to afford a down payment on our first home. We found a beautiful craftsman bungalow in southeast Portland with original hardwood floors, a renovated kitchen, and a backyard perfect for the family we hoped to start someday. When we told Catherine about the house, her first reaction wasn't excitement. It was concern. "Are you sure you can afford something that expensive?" she asked Jessica during Sunday dinner. "Maybe you should look for something smaller, more practical, something you could pay off quickly." Jessica and I had run the numbers carefully. The mortgage payment was within our budget, and we'd saved enough for a 20% down payment to avoid PMI. But Catherine's doubt planted a seed of anxiety that grew over the following weeks. "Maybe she's right," Jessica said one night as we reviewed our finances for the 10th time. "Maybe we should start with something smaller. We can afford this house," I reminded her. "And it's exactly what we wanted. Why are we second-guessing ourselves now?" That's when I learned something important about Catherine Sterling. She had opinions about everyone's decisions, and she expressed those opinions as loving concern that was very difficult to argue against. We bought the house anyway, and I made a decision that would prove crucial years later. I put the deed solely in my name. Not because I didn't trust Jessica, but because my credit score was higher and it secured us a better interest rate. Jessica was completely supportive of this arrangement, and we planned to add her name to the deed after we'd established some payment history. Catherine's reaction to our home purchase was ... complicated. She was happy for us, she said, but concerned about our financial exposure. She suggested we consider taking on renters to help with the mortgage. She wondered aloud whether we'd considered the tax implications. She offered to help us optimize our investment in ways that always seemed to involve her having more input into our decisions. Jessica, who adored her mother, interpreted this as caring involvement. I started to see it as something else, a need to control. The pattern continued over the following years. Catherine had opinions about our career choices, our vacation destinations, our financial priorities. She never directly demanded anything, but she had a gift for making suggestions that felt like obligations and expressing concerns that created anxiety about decisions we'd been confident about. Jessica got pregnant in 2021. Catherine's involvement intensified. She had strong opinions about baby names, nursery colors, and childcare arrangements. She volunteered to help with everything from decorating the nursery to interviewing potential nannies. Then Jessica miscarried at 14 weeks, and Catherine's response revealed something I'd been trying not to see for years. "Well," she said during her condolence visit, "maybe this is for the best. You two aren't really established enough yet for children. This gives you more time to get your finances in order." Jessica was devastated by the loss, and Catherine's practical response to our grief was like salt in an open wound. That's when I started setting boundaries. "Your mother needs to stop offering financial advice," I told Jessica after Catherine suggested we refinance our house to free up capital for future opportunities. "She's just trying to help," Jessica replied, but I could see doubt in her eyes. Catherine's help had become increasingly intrusive, and even Jessica was starting to feel overwhelmed by her mother's constant input. We started limiting Catherine's visits and stopped discussing our financial decisions with her. This led to hurt feelings, passive-aggressive comments about how we were shutting her out, and complaints to Robert about how I was changing Jessica. Then, in January 2023, everything changed. Jessica was driving home from work on a rainy evening when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit her car head-on. She died at the scene. I was destroyed. Jessica had been the center of my world for 8 years, and suddenly I was alone in the house we'd built together, surrounded by reminders of the future we'd planned but would never have. Catherine's response to her daughter's death was immediate and overwhelming. She wanted to plan every detail of the funeral, organize the memorial service, and coordinate with friends and family. In my grief, I was grateful for her help. I couldn't make decisions about flowers or music or which photos to use in the slideshow. But after the funeral, Catherine's help didn't stop. She continued showing up at my house daily, organizing things, cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning, and making decisions about what I should keep and what I should let go of. "You can't live in a shrine to Jessica," she told me one morning, finding me in our bedroom, looking through Jessica's jewelry box. "She wouldn't want you to be stuck in the past." Maybe Catherine was right, but I wasn't ready to make those decisions yet. I was still learning how to wake up every morning in a world without Jessica. I needed time to grieve at my own pace. Catherine, however, had different ideas about my timeline. 3 months after Jessica's death, Catherine started making suggestions about my living situation. The house was too big for just one person. The mortgage was an unnecessary financial burden for someone starting over. I should consider downsizing to something more manageable. When I explained that I wasn't ready to make major life changes, Catherine's suggestions became more persistent. She brought me real estate listings for condos and apartments. She calculated how much money I could save by selling the house and moving somewhere smaller. She introduced me to a real estate agent at a charity event and mentioned that I was thinking about selling. "I'm not thinking about selling," I told her firmly after the third real estate conversation. "This is my home. I'm not leaving." Catherine's expression shifted to the concerned look I'd learned to recognize as a warning. "Sign?" "Michael, honey," she said in the patient tone she used when she thought someone was being unreasonable, "you can't live in the past forever. Jessica would want you to move forward, to build a new life. Keeping the house is just going to keep you stuck." That's when I realized Catherine wasn't trying to help me heal. She was trying to manage my grief according to her timeline and her idea of what my life should look like. I started avoiding her calls and limiting her visits. When she showed up unannounced, I stopped answering the door. I needed space to grieve without someone constantly telling me how I should be feeling or what I should be doing. Catherine's response to my boundaries was escalation. She started calling multiple times a day, leaving concerned voicemails about my isolation and unhealthy attachment to the house. She enlisted Robert to express concern about my mental health. She mentioned to mutual friends that she was worried about Michael's ability to make good decisions. The final straw came in late August when Catherine suggested that I consider giving her power of attorney, temporarily, just to help with any major decisions while you're still grieving. "I don't need help with major decisions," I told her. "I'm functioning fine." "But are you really thinking clearly?" she asked with practiced concern. Grief can affect judgment, and some decisions are too important to make while you're still emotional. That's when I understood what Catherine was really after. She wanted control of my life, my decisions, and ultimately, my property. The house that Jessica and I had bought together wasn't just my home. It was an asset that Catherine believed she should have input on managing. I told Catherine that I would not be giving her any legal authority over my affairs, that I was handling my grief in my life just fine, and that she needed to respect my boundaries. Catherine's response was a masterclass in manipulation, disguised as maternal concern. She was worried about me. She couldn't stand by and watch me make decisions that would hurt my future. She had a responsibility to Jessica's memory to make sure I was taken care of. When emotional manipulation didn't work, Catherine moved to more direct action. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find that "for sale" sign on my lawn. After I'd sent the real estate agent and potential buyers away, Catherine and I had the conversation that clarified everything. "You can't just list my house for sale," I told her, standing in my own kitchen while she acted like she belonged there. "Michael," she said with exaggerated patience, "I'm trying to help you make a smart financial decision. You're too emotional to see clearly right now." "I'm not too emotional. I'm grieving my wife. There's a difference. You're living in the past, and it's not healthy. Jessica would want you to move forward." "Don't tell me what Jessica would want," I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "And don't make decisions about my property without my permission." Catherine's mask finally slipped. "Your property? This house represents 8 years of my daughter's life. I have just as much right to care about what happens to it as you do." "You have exactly 0 legal rights to this house," I replied. "The deed is in my name only. You can't list it, you can't show it, and you certainly can't sell it." That's when Catherine played her final card. "We'll see about that." I called my lawyer that afternoon. Tom Mitchell had handled Jessica's and my wills, and he was familiar with our property arrangements. "Catherine has no legal authority over your house," Tom confirmed after I explained the situation. "If she's representing herself as having authority to sell property she doesn't own, that's fraud. If she's forged documents, that's a felony. What should I do?" "Document everything. Save any communications where she claims authority she doesn't have. and consider a restraining order if she continues trying to interfere with your property. I didn't want to take legal action against Jessica's mother, but Catherine had made it clear that she wasn't going to respect reasonable boundaries. Over the next 2 weeks, she continued her campaign to pressure me into selling the house. She brought more real estate agents to my door. She scheduled additional showings without my permission. She told neighbors that the house would be available soon, and started spreading rumors that I was having financial difficulties that required a quick sale. When I confronted her about these actions, Catherine denied everything with the innocent confusion of someone who couldn't possibly understand why I was being so unreasonable. "I'm just trying to help," she insisted. "You're obviously struggling, and sometimes people need help making difficult decisions." That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I decided to treat Catherine's behavior as what it actually was: attempted theft of my property, rather than what she claimed was loving concern for my well-being. I called Tom Mitchell and told him I wanted to take legal action. The restraining order was served to Catherine on a Thursday morning, 2 weeks after the for sale sign incident. The order prohibited her from entering my property, contacting real estate agents on my behalf, or representing herself as having any authority over my home or finances. Catherine's reaction was immediate and dramatic. She called me crying, claiming she couldn't understand why I was being so cruel. She enlisted Robert to plead her case, painting herself as a grieving mother who is only trying to help her son-in-law make good decisions. But the legal documentation told a different story. Tom had been thorough in preparing the restraining order, and the evidence of Catherine's unauthorized actions was overwhelming. Real estate agents confirmed that she had represented herself as my authorized agent. Neighbors verified that she had been scheduling showings and making claims about my financial situation. Most damning of all, Catherine had forged my signature on preliminary listing agreements with 2 different real estate agencies. When confronted with this evidence, Catherine's story changed. She hadn't been trying to sell the house without my permission. She'd been exploring options to help me understand my choices. The forged signatures were mistakes she'd made while reviewing paperwork. But Tom had been practicing law for 20 years, and he recognized deliberate fraud when he saw it. Catherine's actions constitute attempted theft by deception, he explained. She systematically misrepresented her authority, forged legal documents, and attempted to initiate the sale of property she has no legal claim to. In Oregon, this is a felony. I didn't want to press criminal charges against Jessica's mother, but Catherine left me no choice. Even after the restraining order, she continued trying to interfere with my property. She contacted my mortgage company, claiming there were irregularities with my payments. She filed a complaint with the city, claiming my yard maintenance violated neighborhood standards. She even tried to contest Jessica's will, claiming I was unfit to inherit assets that belonged to the family. Each action was documented. Each interference became part of a pattern that Tom used to build an airtight case of harassment and attempted property theft. The criminal charges were filed in November 2023. Catherine Sterling was charged with attempted fraud, forgery, and harassment. The case never went to trial, faced with overwhelming evidence. Catherine's attorney negotiated a plea agreement that included probation, community service, and permanent prohibition from any contact with me or my property. Robert divorced Catherine 6 months later. During the divorce proceedings, he revealed that Catherine's attempt to control my property wasn't her first foray into financial manipulation. She had been systematically manipulating their finances for years, hiding debt, and making unauthorized purchases that had put their retirement savings at risk. She's always needed to control everything and everyone around her, Robert told me during a brief conversation at the courthouse. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see what she was doing to you. Today, I still live in the house, Jessica and I. bought together. I've made some changes, updated the kitchen, refinished the hardwood floors, created a home office where Jessica's craft room used to be. But I've kept the things that remind me of our life together. The garden she planted, the built-in bookshelves we designed, the bedroom where we planned our future. Catherine's attempt to force me out of my grief and into her idea of my future taught me valuable lessons about boundaries, legal protection, and the difference between support and control. Grief is a personal process that can't be managed by someone else's timeline or manipulated by someone else's agenda. More importantly, I learned that family relationships don't automatically grant people authority over your life or your property. Love and concern can be used as weapons by people who prioritize control over respect. The house that Catherine tried to steal is still my sanctuary, still the place where Jessica's memory lives, still the foundation for whatever future I choose to build. Some battles are worth fighting, especially when the battlefield is your own home, and the weapon being used against you is disguised as caring. Catherine thought she knew what was best for me. What she didn't know was that I was perfectly capable of making my own decisions about my own life, my own grief, and my own property. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is leave them alone to figure things out for themselves. And sometimes the most protective thing you can do is call the police. I chose protection, and I've never regretted it. My home is still mine. My grief is my own to process, and my future is mine to determine. Catherine's manipulation failed because property law is stronger than emotional manipulation, and documentation is more powerful than family pressure. Today, when people ask me about my mother-in-law, I tell them this story. Not to disparage Catherine, but to remind them that legal protection exists for a reason, that boundaries matter, even in families, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who respect you the least. Jessica would have understood. She knew her mother's tendency toward control, and I think she would have been proud of me for standing up to it. The house we bought together is still our home, and it will remain so for as long as I choose to stay. That's what ownership means, the right to make your own decisions about your own life, even when family members think they know better.